What if the greatest prison ever built has no walls, no iron bars, no locked doors, no guards standing watch, just thoughts, just habits, just the quiet, daily surrender to discomfort? You pass through it every morning the moment you choose the easier path. And most people live their entire lives inside it, and never once question whether the door was ever actually locked. We live in an age of extraordinary comfort. Food is plentiful. Entertainment is endless. Information is instant. And yet, men and women are more anxious, more fragile, more emotionally reactive than at any other point in recorded human history. Ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you sat alone in complete silence with no phone, and weren't immediately overwhelmed by restlessness? When was the last time someone criticized you, and you didn't feel a flicker of rage, a sting of shame, or an urgent need to defend yourself? When was the last time life didn't go your way, and you didn't immediately look for someone or something to blame? These aren't small questions. These are the questions that separate the man who has lived from the man who lives. The mind that is controlled from the mind that does the controlling. And today, we are going to talk about the truth that nobody wants to hear. The truth about weak minds. Here is a hard truth. Most people have never once trained their mind. They train their body, or at least feel guilty for not doing so. They train for jobs. They learn skills. But the mind, the instrument through which every single experience of their life is filtered, they leave completely wild, completely undisciplined, completely at the mercy of every incoming impulse, emotion, and external event. And the result? A generation of people who cannot tolerate discomfort for more than 30 seconds. Who check their phones over 150 times a day, not for information, but for reassurance. Who cannot hear a differing opinion without feeling personally threatened. Who confuse emotional reaction with emotional depth. Who mistake loudness for strength. The weak mind is not born. It is made. It is constructed, brick by brick, through years of avoiding hard things. Through years of choosing numbing over feeling. Distraction over reflection. Validation over truth. And here is what makes it insidious. The weak mind does not feel weak to the person who has it. Feels normal. Feels reasonable. Because everyone around them is operating from the same place. Weakness, when it becomes the cultural standard, begins to look like wisdom. Psychologists call this ego-defensive reasoning, the unconscious mental architecture we build to avoid confronting uncomfortable truths about ourselves. When reality challenges our self-image, the weak mind doesn't update the self-image. It distorts the reality. It finds a reason. It finds an excuse. It finds someone to blame. And the tragedy is not that the person suffers. Suffering, Marcus Aurelius would tell you, is the natural condition of the untrained mind. The tragedy is that they never know it. Over 2,000 years ago, a Roman emperor sat in his military tent, far from the comfort of the imperial palace, surrounded by war, disease, betrayal, and the relentless pressure of governing the most powerful empire in the world. And in those moments he didn't call for a drink. He didn't seek distraction. He didn't rage against his circumstances. He wrote. Marcus Aurelius, warrior, philosopher, and arguably the most powerful man alive at the time, wrote to himself. Not for publication. Not for posterity. Just for himself. A private exercise in radical honesty. And what he wrote remains, to this day, among the most psychologically precise observations ever recorded about the human mind. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Read that again. Slowly. Not power over the storm. Not power over other people. Not power over loss or failure or illness. Power over the mind. This was the central philosophical obsession of the Stoics, and it was born not from comfort but from necessity. Epictetus, perhaps the most powerful Stoic voice in history, was not an emperor. He was a slave. A man who literally owned nothing. Who could be beaten, sold, traded at another man's will. And yet he died as one of the most free human beings who ever lived. Because he had discovered something that most people who possess every external freedom never find. Freedom is not what you have. It is what you refuse to be controlled by. Epictetus divided all of reality into two categories. Things within our control, our thoughts, our values, our responses, our effort. And things outside our control, everything else. Health, reputation, other people's opinions, outcomes. The weak mind, he argued, is weak for one reason and one reason only. It spends its energy and attention on the wrong category. It fights to control what cannot be controlled. And in doing so, it surrenders control of the only thing that ever could be. Seneca, statesman, playwright, philosopher, added a layer of psychological precision that feels almost modern in its insight. He wrote, "It is not that I am brave. It is that I know what is truly frightening, and it is not what most people fear." What most people fear: embarrassment, rejection, failure, discomfort, the gaze of others, the loss of status, being wrong. What Seneca feared: wasting the only life he had, dying small, never becoming what he could have been because he spent his days in reaction rather than creation. Most people fear the wrong things. And because they fear the wrong things, they run toward the wrong comforts. And the weak mind is, at its core, a mind organized around the wrong fears. Let us go deeper now. Because philosophy without psychology is incomplete. Why does the mind stay weak? Why, when a person knows they should wake up early, do they still hit snooze? When a person knows they shouldn't react in anger, why do they still explode? When a person knows that seeking validation is hollow, why do they still refresh the screen? The answer lives in the architecture of the human brain, and in a concept psychologists call the path of least resistance. The human nervous system is optimized for one primary goal: survival in the short term. Not growth, not mastery, not meaning, safety. No. The ancient circuits that govern impulse, reward, and fear were designed for a world far simpler and far more dangerous than the one we inhabit today. They were not designed for 21st century complexity. They were designed for the savannah. For predators. For tribal belonging. For immediate threats. And in this modern world, the brain reads discomfort as danger. Social rejection triggers the same neural pathways as physical threat. Criticism activates the same stress hormones as being chased. The absence of stimulation is processed not as peace, but as threat. This is why the weak mind is not lazy. It is afraid. Not consciously. Not visibly. But in its deepest wiring, it is perpetually running from a danger that almost never materializes. And every time it runs, every time you check your phone for comfort, every time you avoid a hard conversation, every time you choose entertainment over reflection, the neural pathway deepens. The groove gets cut a little further into the stone. And the next time discomfort appears, the instinct to flee is a little faster. A little more automatic. This is the mechanics of mental weakness. And it operates below the level of conscious awareness in almost every person who has never been taught to observe their own mind. The Stoics knew this without neuroscience. They called it the hegemonikon, the ruling faculty. The part of the mind capable of watching the mind. Of observing the impulse without being swept away by it. They called the practice prosok, self-attention. Present moment awareness of the inner world. Not spiritual mysticism. Practical mental training, the way you would train a muscle. The weak mind has never been trained to watch itself. The strong mind watches constantly. Now we arrive at the work. Because philosophy is not decoration. It is not a collection of elegant sentences to feel intelligent about. Philosophy, real philosophy, is a program for living. Here are the foundational principles, drawn from Stoic wisdom and modern psychology, for building a mind that does not flinch. Lesson 1. Name what you cannot control, then release it. Every morning before you engage with the world, take 60 seconds. Ask yourself, what am I anxious about today? What am I trying to control? Then divide your list with brutal honesty. What is within your power? Your effort, your words, your attention, your response. Everything else, place it to the side. Not because it doesn't matter, but because your anxiety does not change it. Your fear does not protect you from it. And your obsession with it only costs you the one thing you could actually direct, your own mind. Marcus Aurelius called this the discipline of desire, the art of wanting only what is within reach, and finding that reach to be far wider than most people ever discover. Lesson 2. Train the pause. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. That space, tiny as it sometimes feels, is the location of your entire freedom. The weak mind collapses that space to zero. The impulse arrives and the reaction follows without a single moment of choice. The strong mind stretches that space. Deliberately. Through practice. When you feel anger rising, pause. Name the emotion. Don't speak yet. Don't act yet. The pause is not weakness. The pause is mastery in progress. Epictetus taught that the first question you should ask when anything disturbs you is this mine to carry? If it is not within your control, your disturbance is self-inflicted. And self-inflicted wounds, he said with characteristic bluntness, deserve neither sympathy nor repetition. Lesson 3. Seek discomfort on purpose. The mind that has never been voluntarily uncomfortable will be destroyed by involuntary discomfort. And involuntary discomfort comes for everyone without exception. Cold showers. Hard conversations. Physical training. Sitting in silence without a screen. Saying no to easy pleasures. Doing the work even when motivation has vanished. These are not punishments. They are inoculations. Every time you choose the hard thing when the easy thing was available, you are sending a message to your deepest programming. Discomfort will not kill me. I am not governed by comfort. Seneca practiced what modern psychologists would call voluntary hardship. Periodically, he would live for several days as if he had nothing. Simple food, minimal comfort, not from guilt but from proof. Proof to himself that the things he feared losing could be lost without his destruction. Lesson 4. Stop performing. Start becoming. The weak mind is perpetually performing, calibrating its behavior to what will be received well. What will be approved of. What will win the nod, the like, the agreement, the applause. It monitors the audience before it acts. The strong mind has a different audience, its future self. Ask not, will this impress others? Ask, will I respect myself for this in 10 years? Ask not, what will they think? Ask, what do I think? What do I stand for? What kind of man or woman am I choosing to be, right now when it costs something? This is what Marcus Aurelius meant when he wrote that a man's worth is measured not by what others believe of him, but by what he truly is. Because the opinion of others, even when flattering, is not knowledge of you. It is their story about you. And you are not obligated to live inside someone else's story. Lesson 5. Make peace with impermanence. The Stoics had a practice they called memento mori. Remember that you will die. Not as morbidity. Not as nihilism. As clarification. Marcus Aurelius would hold his victories and his losses in the same hand, and remind himself that both were temporary. The insult fades. The praise fades. The wound closes. The triumph passes. All of it passes. And this understanding, genuinely absorbed, not merely recited, is profoundly liberating. Because when you truly know that nothing is permanent, you stop gripping so tightly. You stop fighting to hold what cannot be held. And in that release, strangely, powerfully, you find you are holding more than you ever did before. There is a question Epictetus used to ask his students. A question he said they should return to every single day of their lives. Who are you when nothing is watching, nothing is judging, and nothing is at stake? Because that quiet, private, unwitnessed version of you is who you actually are. Not the face you wear for the world. Not the person you become when you're trying to impress or protect or avoid. The private you. The one you live with in every silent moment. And if that private version of you is ruled by impulse, by fear, by the need for approval, by the compulsion to react, then no amount of external success will save you from the quiet suffering of a life unlived. But if, through honest self-examination, through voluntary difficulty, through the daily practice of choosing the harder right over the easier wrong, you begin to build a mind that is truly your own, then nothing outside of you holds real power over you. Not failure. Not criticism. Not loss. Not the weight of other people's opinions. Not the uncertainty of the future. Because you will have discovered what every great Stoic philosopher knew and what the weak mind never learns. The storm cannot reach the man who has made peace with the storm. You were not born for comfort. You were born for depth. For meaning. For challenge. For the kind of life that asks everything of you, and reveals, in the asking, that you had everything all along. The work begins now. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. No. If this spoke to something real in you, something you needed to hear, then you're exactly where you're supposed to be. This is warrior philosophy, a channel built for the ones who refuse to live on the surface. Every week, we go deeper into Stoicism, human psychology, and the timeless wisdom that builds men and women who cannot be shaken. Subscribe, so you don't miss what's coming next. And until then, train your mind like your life depends on it, because it does.